Meeting on pages 4 to 10 of the agenda, are they an accurate record?
Okay.
Are there any matters arising? None. Item 5, there are no written questions from the public. Item 6, there are no written questions from councillors. Item 7, there are no petitions. Item 8, the forward plan on pages 11 to 24 for noting. Are there any questions, comments? Councillor Carter.
Just a couple of quickies, hopefully. Item 107556 on page 16, the local development plan approval of regulation 19 consultation. I'm assuming that will be going through the local plan working group before it goes to Cabinet?
It will.
Thank you. Just a couple more. Also in December, we've got the contract for domestic waste and recycling collection services. Is it the intention to go to the Cabinet Office working group or anything beforehand? Give some scrutiny? Or?
Sorry, the what working group?
The overview working group.
The Cabinet overview working group?
No.
No. So the second bit.
We've had the tenders have been returned and they're currently being evaluated. The three bidders are, obviously I can't say too much, but it seems as if the contract is broadly similar in terms of service delivery to that which is provided now. The differences are going to be on pricing and also the range of materials that can be recycled and other minor factors. So in other words, there's not going to be any great change from what we have got at the moment.
But the point is that it's a normal procurement that we evaluate against a set of defined criteria and an appropriate contract for such against the scoring both on cost and quality criteria.
Thank you. It's just that it's the second biggest contract that the council lets. It affects every single household in the town.
Yes.
You may be aware of what the tenders are coming up with.
No, I'm not aware. They're being dealt with by officers.
But you just told me that they're not broadly similar to what we have at the moment.
Yeah, but that's because that's what was required.
Well, as I say, you may know that, but the rest of the people don't know that. There may be some interesting alternatives which people may want to comment on or be interested in, because it affects them directly. But if you're going to make up your mind.
But just to be clear, though, so the specification of the contract was discussed at Cabinet some time ago. I don't recall specifically when, but in terms of what we're putting out to the market, and I know that Councillor Perkins at that time made some remarks about the nature of the contract. So this is not that this is some sort of skunk work that's going on. With a formal process, the specification of the tender that's going to go out was discussed at Cabinet, and now we're simply evaluating the returned bids against the criteria that was defined.
On page 21, there's a couple of housing, homeless reduction plan and strategy in the housing allocations policy due in January and February. I assume they will be going past through the tenants' working groups, panels.
Yes, working groups, panels. You assume correctly, Councillor Carter.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, if there's anything else, which, just noting the forward plan, as we've done. Item 9, no decisions taken outside the normal process by the leader board. Right, item 10, the joint finance and performance report, quarter 1, on pages 25 to 47 of the agenda. I will move.
Seconded.
Just some very remarks, I'm sure there'll be detailed questions, but on both the very tight financial control. Again, this continues to be the case. A very small variance in terms of non-spend representing 0.14% of total budgets and 0.17% of the overall gross budget. So from a financial perspective, again, very tight financial control. And then in terms of the performance element of it, again, improving council performance, meeting the target of 41 out of the 43 performance indicators. There are clearly the two in the report are noted, including the corrective action. I'm sure there may well be those questions, and I'm sure the appropriate portfolio holders can expand on those if necessary. Any questions? Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. On page 27, it talks about the percentage of customer complaints responded to within the target time. Then, of course, you see that there has been a spike in those complaints. And in the commentary on page 27, it talks about the complex nature and volume of those complaints. When you look at the commentary, though, on page 34, I believe it is, I'll just get there, it then goes on to say the main areas of complaints were 40% HTS housing and 31% housing services. I'd just be grateful to just get a bit more detail on what those individual sections, HTS housing and then housing services, what was the sort of flavour of the complaints that were coming out of those services? So we can...
I think for those items you mentioned, there wasn't any one individual scheme, one individual issue. So they range with HCS from performance issues in terms of late for appointments and some around quality of work. I think the housing, there is for the first time in a number of years, people wanting to challenge their position in the housing needs register.
Richard Carter.
The last meeting, we had some discussion as to what the variant, the general fund variance was actually being compared against. I did have a reply which was very helpful, but now we're moving into a new financial year. Well, obviously not now, but explanation as to what the base figure is that's being compared and where it's drawn from. And in particular, there's a comment there about budgets which are not directly under the service area control, as to what that means. So I'm happy to wait for a reply. Yes, I know I haven't provided the questions in advance because I've been away. I've only just got round to reading it.
Sorry.
Asking what page that's all.
I was only saying
26. Paragraphs 2, 3, 4. Page 26, paragraphs 2, 3 and 4.
I'm talking on the date written explanation, that's fine.
Thank you. On the next page, on page 27, we talk about household waste recycle, which is going well. I get a number of comments about problems with HMOs and flats where there are a lot of private rented sector properties where landlords don't pass on the details. And there's a lot of mess and so forth being left. I've not actually raised it as an issue because most of it's sort of commentary rather than specific complaints. But I'm just wondering what steps we are taking to sort of try and counteract the mess left in some areas, particularly in flats where the recycling has only recently started coming in, but where you do get quite a high turnover of occupiers.
Yes, Chair. Councillor Parks is quite right, although the overall outcome is very good. There are particular problems, not only with HMOs, but also with perhaps new residents who are not actually familiar with exactly recycled and not recycled. So this was something I wanted to try to affect. Obviously coming up to the end of the contract and going out for a new contract was perhaps not the ideal time to raise it, but in fact at a meeting this morning, by coincidence, it was agreed that we will be proceeding with the new means of communicating to the public what can be recycled by having a special sticker applied to the inside of the recycling bin, the lid, inside the lid. So as they raise the lid, it gives a complete breakdown of what can be recycled. And this is going to be applied by the contractor as part of a round cycle. Obviously there'll be an extra cost which we had this morning, which is acceptable within the bounds of the contract. So as soon as we've agreed with the new contractor, that will be one of the first things that we do. And hopefully there will be not just reinforcing the existing recycling, what recycling covers, but there will be new items that can be recycled that haven't previously been able to be recycled. This is something that I've received correspondence about. We've perhaps not kept up with, particularly in some London boroughs where they've extended the variety of items that can be recycled, and so we may not catch up with the best examples, but we've certainly been able to advance our recycling, both in terms of ensuring that everybody understands what they can recycle, and in terms of the variety of things that can be recycled by way of this new, if you like, wallpaper that will be inserted on the inside lid of the recycling bin.
So, there have been a number of publicity campaigns, what have you, in conjunction with Essex County Council, what have you, and we will do those. Just as a little aside, there's a bit of debate going on around whether this measure, so not in the context of Harlow Council, but more generally, because part of this is dictated by EU legislation, of which there's about to be a revision to, is actually an appropriate measure at all, in the sense that the problem is it gives sort of perverse incentives. The more rubbish you produce that you can recycle, the better the measure, which is clearly sort of nonsense. So looking at sort of producer responsibility, reducing packaging, whereas the real end measure is reducing the amount of stuff you stick in landfill as opposed to the amount you recycle. So there's a bit of debate going on about that, both in the LGA and in the context of what happens when the Great Repeal Bill happens and all that EU legislation gets put into UK law, what we do about it then. But in terms of your specific question, I too have concerns about, not the concept of recycling, but rubbish and maintenance of tenancy, particularly in HMOs. I mean, I've certainly had quite a few in my patch where there's been specific complaints. I've been liaising on a variety of issues about both HMO licensing, about environmental health and what have you. It is an issue, and I don't have a magic wand to solve. But I think it is. So my personal view, it's just a personal view, and I'm not thought it through or discussed it in any great detail. Is we ought to have another look at HMO licensing to make sure that there isn't a knock-on detrimental effect in terms of stuff being strewn over gardens, maintenance of gardens, and ancillary topics. Right, that was it.
Thank you, Joe. It occurs to me that there could be some leafleting campaigns on a sort of area basis where sort of problems do arise. Just to remind people what the blue bin is for and what the black bin is for and where the food waste goes and so forth. Because as I say, people do, occupiers do turn over, and I can't imagine sort of that their priority when they move in is what to do with the rubbish. But we could possibly sort of help it out that way.
Just a recyclable paper leaflets.
Of course. Nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question on the final page of the report. you've got the progress in delivering the corporate plan. It notes that 16 milestones have lapsed or require further action. I'm not expecting anyone to give me the 16 tonight, but could someone write to me and let me know what they are? And maybe tonight could we just have a flavour of one or two, an example of what's lapsed?
On a more general point, for everyone wants to sort of volunteer, I personally would like to have a breakdown of these things. I'm regularly reported on the quarterly finance report. It's not overly helpful just having a numerical
breakdown, no.
In the same ways that the KPIs are reported, so whether there are exceptions, either good or bad or indifferent,
would be helpful.
I'll certainly be asking for that.
I'm afraid I can't help entirely with examples, but we are in quarter one, obviously quarter four is the important one. What I will do to all members here tonight, I'll send a list of those 16 for you to have a look at with an explanation.
And can we just note in the minutes the request that future iterations of the ASPR do note the exceptions, i.e. some detail about what the exceptions are and what we're doing about them, if anything.
Can I, whilst I appreciate that and appreciate the help in drilling down, it's a little worrying that no one can give me any example. If these are key milestones for delivering the council's corporate plan that have lapsed and no one happens to know just one of them, that's a little worrying. Okay.
Are there any further questions? Comments? Right, so recommendations to like the turn on the forms of the council recommendation A.
Sorry, Chair, I've no questions, but I do have a comment.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I apologise, I thought you were doing questions. I think while we're talking about performance indicators, I think it would be remiss of me not to mention there are obviously paragraphs here regarding homelessness, amount of people we have in temporary accommodation rising, and we've had a debate before about the national trend and the reasons behind that. But certainly I'd like to remind people in this room tonight that we have a report coming in January 2018, which will be hopefully following the government's announcements on the homelessness reduction bill. We also have in December, we have the announcement by government of funding towards homelessness reduction, so I certainly look forward to. And hopefully we will be receiving government guidance in the autumn of 2017. Obviously, I, for one, and I'm sure I'm governed by everyone in this room, hope that that will bring some real change to the situation, not only that we have in Harlow, but we have globally with homelessness. It is a real issue that we need to tackle.
And indeed, having spent the day at the LGA, it is one of the key priorities for the association nationally around housing and homelessness and the relationship between the two. Thank you for that. If there's anything else then, recommendation on page 25, recommendation A, are we agreed?
Agreed.
We agree to. Moving forward to item 11, which is the Housing Revenue Account 41 Finance Report on pages 48 to 55.
So moved, Chair.
And I second, Chair.
Do you want to make any introductory remarks? Mike?
The only thing I really draw attention to is the overspend.
Go into more detail. Is that we've taken fire prevention, obviously, in light of recently happenings, very, very seriously indeed. And there's quite a lot in regards to fire safety schemes, and there will be quite a bit in the future. And one scheme in particular, which has always concerned me, which has been Spring Hills Tower, which I think is worthy of special consideration because of its special design. So all in all, yes, there's an overspend, but it's explained in the report, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding garage rents, it says in there low income from garage rents due to the high level of void garages. Has the Cabinet Member for Housing looked at perhaps reducing the price of garages to alleviate some of the problems regarding parking. So how many void garages are there? How many are in disrepair, which cannot be used?
Thank you. I can't give the exact number, what I can give is a percentage. Currently, out of 8,000 garages, 20% are void for various reasons. They may be in disrepair. We do suffer, and always suffered, from we have certain areas within the town where we find letting garages very difficult. Sometimes there are areas where there's waiting lists, and sometimes there are areas where we find garages are very difficult to let. The question that Councillor Souter has raised about reducing the cost of renting a garage park, there is a scheme currently in place where we have areas in the town where we offer reductions to garage rent to try and hopefully have a few more people renting garages. This has never gone away, it's still currently this. What I am happy to though is to make sure that it's widely broadcast now to try and encourage more people to rent garages.
Any other questions? Comments?
Can I say to you?
I must admit, I was unaware of it, that we actually have a scheme in place to actually encourage people to actually take up garages. But perhaps it's been lost because it's such a long-standing policy. And so perhaps we could actually have some kind of publicity campaign and use Harlow Times to actually re-establish exactly, because I do agree with the comments that have been made, that if we can take up some of the additional garages, simply because they are expensive, there's no question of it. But it's obviously a bit unfair on the people that actually rent the existing garages. But for a year, people could actually get, new tenants could actually possibly, in very hard to let areas, could actually get a discount on their rent.
You've given us a hard standing for parking, which has actually helped significantly in that area. And there are other areas where looking at disposal of garage sites, potentially for small scale development, and that's been discussed at Cabinet and elsewhere. Councillor Johnson.
Just to return to Councillor Danvers' comments about overspends on fire safety, and I just think, and please take this in the spirit in which it's meant, I think well done to everyone involved in sorting that out so quickly, because I know, post Grenfell, we all fear any fires that affect our tenants in tower blocks. And I know Harlow has had, under administrations of every colour, a very good history of fire safety in our tower blocks, and indeed after the disaster we were held up on national news as one of the really good examples, and that's work that our officers in our housing team have done over many years, and as I say, over different colour administrations. So really pleased to see that work being continued. Praise to the officers for the work that they do, and I think any council worth its salt should be making sure that those investments are there and making sure that we're up to tip-top scratch with our fire safety. So just a big support from us on that.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that. Absolutely. I mean, the work that's been done both in regular fire safety assessments, and I rightly point out that we publish all our fire safety assessments online, and that was literally held up on the one show on BBC National Television. Clearly, in the aftermath of Grenfell, there's been a sort of redoubling of checks, as you'd expect. Clearly, one of my first considerations was redoubling the checks. Out of the 14 tower blocks, there was none of the aluminium composite material used on our tower blocks. There's only one tower block that had retrofitted external insulation, which wasn't of the type that was involving Grenfell and passed all the appropriate safety checks. There have been double checks by the Fire and Rescue Service, and that continues. And we will continue to look at if there are additional measures that can be taken. There was an extensive communications campaign to all residents of tower blocks in Harlow, making sure they're aware of the fire safety procedures, advice and guidance what to do in the event of a fire, and I'd absolutely like to echo the excellent work that officers in the Harlow Council have done over a number of years to ensure the safety of Harlow residents.
Thank you, Joe. Just to continue the theme, I will draw members' attention to page 175 of the agenda tonight, which is the minutes of the Safety Committee, where there's a long note from the head of housing, so just on that particular subject, which will go into a bit more detail as to what the background is and what we'll be doing. And we will be moving on to the investment programme on the next item, the capital programme, as to what the council is going to be doing over the next 12 months. So, it is foremost here in our thoughts of everybody. And as everybody else has said, we need to do as much as we can to reassure ourselves that we are looking at all this and to ensure their safety.
Just following on from that, I'm going to actually say some words for the next agenda item because Councillor Cox is actually quite correct. And I agree with all the sentiments and the words that have been said on this very, very important subject. And it's actually quite apt because today was the start of the public inquiry into the horrible events in Kensington in June. But Councillor Cox, right, in actual item 12 in the capital programme, it actually tells you about some of the meat on the bone and the way forward and the money that's being spent in this area. And I think that's really quite relevant.
Is there anything further on item 11, which is the majority? No comments required. Right, in that case, the recommendations A and B on pages 48 are agreed.
Very
agreed, thank you. Item 12, which is
So moved, Chair.
I formally move, Chair. Second.
Right. So this is the capital programmes. What do you want to support? Is there anything you wanted to highlight?
I think reiterate the fire safety assessments. It's going to cost, if you've seen the report, 2.8 million. And once again, it goes into details on that. I'm quite happy to answer questions, Chair.
Other questions?
Thank you. Not particularly on that. These papers were brought up at the Housing Standards Board last week, where there were quite a few questions. One thing I do want to question, though, is in fact paragraph 12, as was related there. One of the first heating district schemes that the council undertook was at Taney's Dell, where the contractor had finished, Lord Stewart, cleared the site, moved away, and then within 48 hours the heating system failed because as I understand it, the original water pipes, underground pipes, gas pipes, whatever, had not been checked as part of the review and had failed. And according to paragraph 12, an extra £560,000 is necessary for these works and is included in the revised capital programme. The question really is, whose fault was it and who's paying?
Thank you. I mean, Councillor Carter's factually quite correct, but he needs to remember that the first phase of this heating programme, phase 1, was in fact 4 programmes, of which Tanningdale was only one. The other, quite important to remember that the other 3 went successfully well. Yes, there was a problem at Tannisdale. It was the first phase, and because it was the first phase, we looked at what to do within the programme, and it was evidence-based. There was no evidence when we started phase 1 that the pipe work underneath that particular structure was going to be an issue. It didn't become an issue until after the work was completed, as Councillor Carter was quite correct. What we have done now moving forward, and obviously now we're going to go on to phase 2, which is again part of the report, we are now going to double check the pipe work that leads into these blocks before we move in to do any work. But I think it's quite important to remember this pipe work is 40 to 50 years old, and there was no evidence-based facts that the pipework was going to leak, cause a problem before we started the work. But yes, we have learned a lesson that we need to check the pipework outside of these buildings before we go in. But I think it's also very important to remember this is about tackling fuel poverty. This is about better heating systems for those people in these areas. It's a really important issue in the town, which is going to cost this council quite a lot of money. The final question I think Councillor Carter asked was who's going to pay. I'm happy to say, but I think it's going to be within existing budgets.
I think Mark, that it is included in his reports, an additional sum to add to the capital programme.
So I think the question was whose fault was it, and the implication was, is the contractor liable for an element of that? I think that was the question.
Thank you. Obviously, you know, hindsight's a wonderful gift, but if you're replacing the heating system, which is 50 years old, then part of the infrastructure of that system is also 50 years old or even older, and you know, perhaps should have been looked at as well.
Hindsight's a wonderful gift. We've all got that.
I can only emphasise 3 out of the 4 systems that we put in place didn't have these issues. This was 1 in 4 that had these issues. And yes, checks will be done to make sure this doesn't happen again.
If I may continue, I'm also assuming that you, the council, have also paid out reimbursement and compensation to those tenants who suddenly lost their hot water and heating, and have had to rely on electric fan heaters. Well, okay, so that's in the summer, so it's probably not too much of a problem, but you know, it's still an inconvenience. And also for those people who have had to take time off work for the contractors to come back for a second time to fix their house property.
I can confirm that those affected will be reimbursed.
Thanks, Chair. If I may move on to the non-housing element of the capital report. In paragraph 33 on page, whatever it is, 64, there's a reference to disabled facilities grants for 1718, for 677. However, the grant received in 1617 was underspent by £119,000, which is a remarkable turnaround because in previous years there's always been a waiting list. And it goes on to say, officers will determine in consultation with the County Council whether the additional funding can be applied to wider welfare and discretionary services. I would have thought there would have been enough demand for DFGs that the money could be rolled on for the current year, unless those wider welfare and discretionary services specifically are for the benefit of people with disabilities.
Yes, this is the short answer to that, Councillor Carter. It is very strictly ring fence. The disbursement will be to people with disabilities.
In the fullness of time, I'd be interested to know where it goes.
I'll see that you get advice on that.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Are you done with questions? Any other comments? In that case,
just briefly, going back on saying to talk about this agenda item and the previous agenda item, and that is the paragraphs 8, 9 and 10, which looks at the fire safety and regulation. And I'll echo the earlier words, but I think it's also important to note that not only we thank all the officers for all the hard work they did following these events, also the Corporation of Essex Fire and Rescue Services, who undertook quite a task with council officers inspecting all these premises, and you will see additional £2.8 million being spent on Spring Hills Tower. This is something we don't have to do, but it's something to come as a recommendation on working with Essex Fire Service that we are obviously taking very clearly and obviously going to be doing.
and it's also worth noting that once the various inquiries and inquests and what have you have concluded, there may well be additional recommendations that we clearly no job. Right, so probably concluding on that. So item 12 on gender recommendations A to C that spans pages 56 and 57. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. On to item 13, the annual Treasury Management Report.
I'd like to move this on.
Investment managed by the council for this last year has been £48.5 million, and that's actually generated just over £300,000 interest, which represents quite in the present circumstances, with just what the Bank of England guy has been saying about interest rates, but the rate of return of 0.62%, which doesn't sound that much, but obviously brings in the 304,000, which is quite a bit above the Treasury benchmark. So, you know, hats off to a small team of people in a very small authority who are actually earning this additional money for the authority.
Couldn't agree more with Councillor Danvers. I've always been very proud of the Treasury Management team in this council, in opposition and when I led the council. One of my favourite memories from being leader of this council. I was on a trip with other leaders across Europe as part of the New Towns that we were involved in. When the Icelandic banks went down, and literally every council leader that from across Europe that was on this conference was stuck to their phone for hours talking to their finance guys, and I was wandering around with a big smile on my face because our guys had seen the problem coming months and months and months before, because of the superb way they manage our money, and had pulled our money from Iceland, and we were one of the few councils that had been invested, whose treasury management strategy had worked. And it continues to work. Year on year, when this report comes to Cabinet or Council, we have outperformed the Treasury benchmark, we've outperformed the market almost. And I think our Treasury management officers deserve huge praise for that, for the work that they do. So I would totally agree with Councillor Danvers on that.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, obviously echo what's already been said, having had a slightly closer interest in it. If I can refer to page 9 on paragraph 9 on page 72, we talk about the guidance from Arling Close and how the council has been having to widen its range of products that we can find to invest in safely. And it says, as a result, the council held investments in CDs, CCLA, money market funds, fixed and variable investments, and the Treasury's debt management office. Well, I hope we're not actually using the debt management office because they pay even less than most people. But I'm intrigued by the comment or reference to fixed and variable investments. Does that mean we don't have any money at call, which is what I thought the money market funds were? But also, if you turn to paragraph 27 on page 78, showing the investment activity during the year, it shows that we've suddenly, for the first time, started investing in other local authorities, which I would have thought would have been mentioned in this paragraph 9. So, can we be told why there's been this move into local authorities, what their credit ratings are? Do Arling Close grade them for us so we know which ones to use?
There are very few local authorities that actually carry a credit rating in the same way that financial institutions do. There are one or two that have gone through the process of considering bond issues where they've had to go along the route of a credit rating agency assessment. But we are recommended through the advice we receive that local authority investments are a safe investment to make, despite the lack of the credit rating. And there is more activity, I think probably based on the fact that there is higher risk in the investment market generally, that more local authorities are looking to each other to lend and borrow, because we consider each other to be a safe place to invest or borrow from.
14, non-investment rates, discretionary rate relief policy.
I've moved this, Chair. This is something the government has introduced and is kind of phasing out. And in fact, you can see on page 95 over the next 4 years the way in which it will actually be phased out. In the comment in some of the national newspapers about how public houses are being treated, but I don't think it would affect us in Harlow. But work is being done whether in fact on an individual basis whether there would still be hardship over this. But other than that, the figures are there, Chair.
Well, in fact, this is just enacting as we are required to do a council policy to reflect government policy. Any questions or comment?
Thank you. Just a technical question. It says in there somewhere, I can't remember the page now, I think it's paragraph 6.2 or something, all applications for rate relief have to be in writing. I'm just wondering, in this sort of day and age where we're using these stupid little things that don't work, whether applications can be done digitally or whether it has to still be done on paper.
We are trying to move towards a more automated process via the website, but for the particular new reliefs that have been introduced from the spring budget announcements, we're anticipating that the majority of the awards will be automatic and there will be no application. They'll be done on an assessed criteria as set out in the policy. So there'll be a new bill issued to the relevant business that qualifies. We've left the reference to applications in the policy because there may be instances where we might have to ask for an application to be completed when there's any uncertainty about the ability of the business to qualify.
Well, they could do it digitally if they wanted to.
We hope to get there. There are a number of online forms that we are developing, but at the moment we haven't got them for these particular reliefs.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
It's worth noting on page 95 that although the percentages are formulaic in the policy after year 4, there's a reference to by application only, so presumably that would apply after year 4.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this? It's relatively so item 14 on page 91, recommendation A. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Moving on to item 15, the selection of a contractor for Prentice Place.
Happy to make the recommendation that's contained in the report, and then I'd like to make a few comments.
I'll definitely give a second.
Well, many of us have been in this room for a long period of time. I remember when this first came up a long time ago. This is the final piece of the jigsaw of Potter Street. And we have achieved a lot of success over a period of time, but we always knew that this area was going to be the most difficult and the most challenging over these issues. But we're there. We've got a recommendation in front of you with a contractor that we're very impressed with. We've also, as in section 7, we're also putting in an overseeing position because we want to make sure that this is done at the right pace, at the right time, to make sure that there is no mistakes, but also to work with the businesses, because it's very important in this small area that the businesses are open and functioning as usual. If this is agreed tonight, we will have people on site in 10 days' time, and it should take about 42 weeks to complete. And I think we should all go in 42 weeks plus and raise a glass to what we have achieved finally. And then just on that, I would like to make a personal thanks to certainly the local councillors, Councillor Wilkinson, Turl and Holcott. But Andrew, I would also like you to pass on my personal thanks to Councillor Hall, because I know that he has been there through thick and thin at residents' associations and others. And whilst we or opposed on many things, we have remained solid in supporting the council's position on this particular area. And finally, I'd certainly like to personally thank the lady to my right, Jane, because we've had more conversations, discussions and debates about, I want to swear, this opportunity and challenge than anything else that we have done for a number of years. And certainly Andy, our new regeneration manager, is meeting with the businesses all the time to make sure that they feel comfortable with the way forward. On that I'll conclude.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, go on.
Thank you. No, I'd like to, thank Councillor Durkin for his patience with moving me off my ward team over the past few years, or maybe it's been a bit frustrating. I think it's really good that this is finally happening. I do a note of caution that we do need to learn and look back, but for a number of reasons this was very complicated, and it wasn't just down to the council that the reasons why it's been delayed, but this wasn't obviously quite the original scheme that, I mean, I wasn't a councillor when this was very first discussed, but I've been for 5.5 years, and it's been the main thing in my ward that's been the big issue. You know, it was great that we could get the other half done, and this has been the big issue for us. But it is a note of caution that we do need to learn from our mistakes and how we work in partnership to make sure that in future, you know, that when we have to use developments, we don't end up in a position where we have to lose the percentage of social housing that we originally had, and different things to make scheme viable. That being said, I am really happy it's happening full stop, even if it's not quite as ideal as we would like. And thank you for all the officers' hard work. I know it's been a big challenge. And thank our partners in the business. They've been patient in what's been a tough process. That's it.
Thanks, Jo. Whilst we echo what everyone's been saying, yes, it's been a long time coming. But I think it's also fair to thank the members of the Harlow Common Residents Association who have also been pursuing this doggedly over very many years, and I think they must be probably as happy as we are. And I think I'm right in thinking Councillor Durkin didn't have any grey hair when all this started.
No. Can I just add, however, whilst I know Emma's comments, and absolutely life is all about learning, I think we've had about 5 or 6 different designs for this over the last period of time. And I have to be saying that there were some partners that we were working with who were doggedly determined to stop everything at every stage, any opportunity they could. And actually, we've had to front far too much because of the irresponsible manner that certain partners, unfortunately, that has now been resolved, have actually caused us. So, yes, you're absolutely right. Grey hair and everything else.
So just a very brief graph from me. So yeah, it has been very challenging, and you know, relationship with partners do one of them. Another one is actually that Emma referred to is around just retaining an acceptable level of actual social housing in the scheme and retaining its viability because of the complexity of the retail developments and the refurbishments and land swaps but I think, you know, we have got a good scheme now. While clearly we would have preferred a higher proportion of social housing, I mean, there have been a great deal of discussion, redesign, recosting and planning to get to the point we're at. I mean, I've been involved in it as well. So anyway, we are where we are, and moving forward. That's good. So unless anyone's got any further comments or questions, the recommendation A on page 144 to approve the appointment of contractor A for the refurbishment works to Apprentice Place. Are we agreed?
Yes.
Thank you. Right, on to item 16, the HDS Limited Contract Awards on page, I'll start on page 147.
I formally move this item, Chair.
I second it, Chair.
Any remarks? No? Councillor Charles.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just some opening questions. The first question relates to heating replacements. That is one of the focuses of this report. Can the portfolio holder tell me when is the normal cycle for awarding these kinds of contracts, and when normally do these works take place?
So I think the big question, Councillor Charles.
So, one of the key focuses of this paper looks at heating replacements. And the question I had for you, Mark, was, the first one was, when do normally these contracts normally awarded in the year cycle, and when are they normally delivered in the year cycle?
They're normally delivered. We are delivering this heating cycle. They will be delivered in April. And when are they normally awarded? When we put the 3-year plan together.
So the report itself, Mark, as you know, says that this has been delayed. And at a last cabinet, when I asked this question, the head of housing said there'll be no heating replacements this winter. I am aware that these types of contracts are awarded earlier in the year, so the work can take place before the winter. So that's the question I was asking you. The next question I have is when you look at pages 148 to 149, it identifies the communal boilers that are affected by this. Can you tell me the age of the boilers that are identified in this report? What's the age of them? Because they obviously need to be replaced. But do you know the age and the condition of these boilers?
I believe, and I'm happy for Andrew to comment, that when we designed this programme, the programme was put together in order of priorities on the most needed first. So I'm happy for Andrew to put more make than that.
Councillor Charles, when we put the 5-year housing investment programme together and the 3-year plan is prioritised, and because of the assurances Mark gave the Cabinet in July of phase 1 of the next year's contracts award, which will be a top priority in the financial year next year.
As you can appreciate, Andrew, because one of these is in my ward, the Ware, I'd be very grateful to know when it's likely that the Ware will be, that their boiler system will be replaced in that financial year, as I suspect other councillors who represent the areas where there are communal boilers that need to be done. Heating is an absolute right for people. Everyone gets that in this room. And I just very much hope that we get answers to those questions, because people will be obviously quite anxious about these sorts of matters.
When these things are likely to happen.
Chair, if I can respond to that. When the contract awards are approved by Cabinet and implementation plans then created, and that can be provided to council.
Any other questions? Comments?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I find this very concerning. This first came up at the previous Cabinet meeting where we were discussing the delay in the contract awards, and this obviously had something to play with the fact of the phasing issues that came about with HTS and the work that was undertaken there. The reality is of this, and this report spells it out, that 2 years' worth of work is going to be lumped in one financial year. When you look at pages 148 and 149, it will concern those tenants who are in those residences where there are communal boilers, that actually their systems, and we need to get confirmation on how old those boilers are, but we're given an estimate that the pipework is about 40 to 50 years old. They will want reassurances from the council that actually their heating will be maintained and protected over the winter. And that will be at the forefront of everyone's mind, and I'm conscious of that. The issue is that there has been a complete misjudgment over the phasing of this contract. Yes, part to play with HTS, but at the forefront of the council's mind should have been to make sure and maintain the phasing for such an important element of tenants' services, and that is their heating. So, of course, this opposition will be watching closely the work that will be scheduled in the next financial year, 2018 and 2019, because tenants' heating is one of those key priorities that we all care very much about. I'm really concerned to learn that the Ware in my own ward is one of those
are one of those areas where their communal boiler will have its replacement delayed to the next financial year. And I'm grateful for the fact that the Head of Housing will come back to me as soon as he can to identify when this work will be taken out in that financial year. I repeat what I said earlier. I very much hope that this work is carried out as soon as possible in that financial year, particularly because my own ward is affected.
Any other comments?
Sorry. So just to sum up, particularly on Councillor Charles' comments, it's not just about tenants and residents heating. This is actually about fuel poverty as well, and tackling fuel poverty, something that we take extremely serious. And if we wasn't taking it so seriously, you will see the capital funding that is going in to these projects. It is a large chunk of money. This is against a backdrop of a government that, through rent reductions, etc., that are cutting funding year after year after year to this council. We are still delivering very good services, as you can see by an earlier report on what we're delivering against our KPIs. And yes, we do take heating systems, particularly a lot of these areas are covered by a lot of elderly residents. And I can assure the councillor that we are going to be working extremely hard to deliver this programme, making sure it's robust, making sure it's value for money, and making sure, first and foremost, that residents come first. Included in that is a statement that Councillor Charles made a couple of cabinet meetings ago about assurances about not doing heating systems during the winter. We've particularly fashioned this programme, so all these programmes start in April. So you can't have it on one hand, you're delaying the work.
No,
but
it's in the report.
Councillor Charles, I'm speaking, I think
I'm speaking
you were
as well.
speaking.
You're
You can't have it on
misinterpreting
one
what I said.
hand, projects are being delayed, and then want assurances that we're not working during the winter. That it is absolutely ludicrous, and I can assure you that we are making these projects extremely serious, as you can see by the capital that we're putting into these projects. Thank you, Chair. I've summed up.
Okay, I'm just going to briefly mention, as garages were mentioned earlier on, just draw attention to item 10, capital investment in refurbishment and in replication demolition. So, the recommendation on page 147, item A, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 17, the disposal of the council's freehold property known as the Stowe.
I'm happy to put the recommendations to Cabinet as outlined in the report and plan. Say a few words. Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Cabinet colleagues, as you know, the Stowe depot has been redundant for nearly 20 years. When I visited it a few months ago, the situation was of a poor standing that we actually felt that there was no other alternative but to see whether or not we should put this onto the market. We have been approached by the owners of the Stowe Bay to see whether or not we would be willing to sell this as a freehold to that company. That company does have a strong reputation, and certainly I have seen some of the portfolio activities that have taken place in other regenerations, and they are done of a high specification. I have to be saying, however, we should be very cautious, and I know that John may want to mention one other issue, but this is a scheme of 55 mixed dwellings, which is basically 1 or 2 bedroom flats. When I met with the councillors on site, I think we were all surprised how 55 flats could get into that area, let alone 55 parking spaces. But that will be for the planning department to look at, and we're fairly confident that they will be robust in what they are looking at. But also equally, in my capacity as not just regeneration but enterprise, we also have to be very mindful that a number of small businesses will close as a direct result of this application if it went through planning. And again, these small businesses are the heart of our community, and we need to be able to ensure that they are well looked after and well supported, and hopefully to be relocated. It's my understanding that the owner of the Stowe Bays has been in constant contact with these particular tenants at this present time, but I think it is something that we need to be very cautious and very mindful of. And my final point is in relation to this, is if we do get to a position of selling, it would be my ambition that we would have the capital receipt ring-fenced to enable, enhance and rejuvenate the Stowe area as a total area, because it would be an absolute nonsense of building high specification, high quality flats looking out on what is effectively the back of the Stowe where the toilet block and other things are, which makes no sense whatsoever. So we do need to work with this, if this is to happen, we need to work with this developer to try to get to a win-win situation. I'll conclude on that, Chair.
So I'm going to second this, but I do want to make a specific comment and move a slight amendment to recommendation B. So just in terms of background, it's a clear priority of this administration as part of the More and Better Housing priority to provide affordable and social housing. The difficulties in planning of enforcing that both clear priority and aspiration have become apparent in a number of different regards. It's not quite the same situation as Churchgate Street Hotel, but there's a number of issues around viability is the key thing, around changes in central government planning legislation. So while I clearly will not comment on a predetermination of any planning application that may come about in relation to this development, this is slightly different in that we own a bit of the land that might form part of this development. And while we might have limited levers to pull in influencing the planning side of this equation, we clearly have the levers about whether and how and to whom we sell our land. So I'm going to recommend a specific addition to recommendation B. So it currently reads, recommended that approved plans to dispose of the council's freehold interest in the Stowe depot, conditional upon the purchaser delivering a satisfactory mixed-use scheme of development, to which I want to continue to say incorporating an appropriate level of affordable and social housing. So that's the amendment to recommendation B.
I second that, Chair.
So with that amendment, are there any other questions? Councillor Johnson.
Given the discussion earlier on Prentice Place, is the portfolio holder willing to go out on a limb and suggest a timeline for completion of this redevelopment?
So clearly that's in the hands, in terms of the sale, it's clearly in the hands of the owner of the other bit of the land, where the planning application goes, whether they believe that it is viable to meet our stipulation about selling our land to include affordable social housing. I mean, that's the difficulty. It is outside our control in terms of, this is not a thing that we wholly own, which I would like it to be, in terms of doing a council-led development, but that's the problem. Sorry, okay.
Yes, Chair. I think that, I'm not sure if anyone's going to disagree with this amendment. I think it's right to emphasise that why we need this amendment. Any development that takes place, particularly a significant development, more than just half a dozen dwellings, has an impact on the local and in fact the town's existing population. People who move into new accommodation require facilities, they require space, they require to access roads. All these things have an impact on the existing population, and because of that it's recognised that local authorities in planning applications are entitled to require developers to provide certain benefits that recompense the public for these inconveniences. Obviously this can take the form of affordable social housing, but also other features, off-site features, which are incorporated in section 106. And as you said, Chair, unfortunately the system where it used to be that these public payments or public recompenses were put at the beginning of the calculations in determining the viability of planning applications. The law has been changed and now they come at the end, and quite often the developer employs very expensive consultants to prove that they don't need to make any contributions at all. So I think that because we have got some leverage, I don't mean financial leverage, but some leverage in terms of the fact that the developer is interested in buying part of our estate, then I think that it's only right that we should make sure that the developers' responsibilities to the public are reflected in some provision of social and affordable housing. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Jed. Just a couple of questions and comments. Hopefully those of you looking at page 158, which has the plan, will be aware that where it says St Andrew's Methodist Church, actually that's not where the church is, it's in the black bit below it. So it's not as though, I mean, hopefully this will not be incorporated in any deeds that the council or contracts or conveyances the council has. Otherwise it would suggest they're selling off land that they don't own. And the depot is somewhat bigger than that bit that's fixed there. Just whilst we're talking about that, as I'm sure Councillor Durkin noticed when he was walking around there, on the brick walls on the outside of the depot, there's a pattern which says HTC. And I wonder if any thought has been given to perhaps we'll try to preserve those somewhere else. You know, just as a little memento, you know, a little bit of history. And finally, I see where you're coming from on your amendment on paragraph B, but the need for elements of social housing is already in the local plan, and I don't have the SBD in front of me, but I'm sure it's referred to in there as well. So you know, it does seem to be a bit of overkill.
The point Carter, is that under planning law, with the local plan or otherwise, we can't actually insist. So if a developer comes to us and can prove that it's not viable, i.e. make the appropriate level of profit, plus the increase in the land value and all that sort of stuff, they can basically say we're not providing any Section 106 contribution to all social housing, and if that viability assessment stands up, regardless of whether the Development Management Committee of this council refuses a planning application, it is likely to be approved on appeal. So from a planning point of view, yes, we have a clear statement, it's it will be in the local plan, it's in the existing local plan about 35% social housing allocation, and it's a clear aspiration. But we can't enforce that as much as we try on every single occasion because of the changes in the national planning framework around viability assessments that happened a few years ago. So my point about this is not about the planning application, which will take its course, whether we do the process, all that sort of stuff. We own the land, and we can make a decision about selling that land on the condition that whatever planning application they put in incorporates a level of affordable and or social housing that's appropriate. I deliberately chose a slightly vague term in terms of appropriate. I don't want to say it has to be 35% or whatever, because the reality is we are unlikely to achieve that. But I do want to make sure that there is some level of social housing, because the likelihood is if we just sold it to this developer, and there will be zero social housing in it. So it's basically one of the few levers we have because we own a bit of land, which is why I'm suggesting the amendment.
If I can just come back on that. So, from the developer's viewpoint, yes, we need social housing. There is no argument about that. But I would imagine, without trying to prejudge the issue, I would imagine that they will then bear that requirement in mind when they're making an offer to buy our land. So we either get the housing or the money. So just as long as everyone's aware of that as they sort of go into agreement.
I'm acutely aware of that, and there's a possibility, how you like, that the land value might be, in the judgment of the buyer, be less because of our assistance on social housing. But there we go.
Brickwork?
Sorry.
Brickwork?
The HDC brickwork is one of it.
On the wall?
Do you know what, Simon? I never noticed it. Perhaps I was looking in the wrong direction.
I'm
But
sure the ward councils will really...
okay. Well, yeah.
We can find something.
No, certainly look. We'll look at it. I'm not sure whether or not we want to keep it, but we'll certainly look at it.
Councillor Eddie Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to agree with the Cabinet member with regard to ring fencing the funds. I think it's a brilliant idea. I think the Stowe does need some assistance, and I'd like to see it formalised in some way, just so that the money, however much Harlow Council makes of selling of land, whether it be some social housing and a smaller amount of money, that money does go back into the Stowe.
I can thank you for your comments. I can reassure you that if we get to that particular...
Go back into the Stowe.
Thank you for your comments. I can reassure you that if we get to that particular point, then there will be a further report brought forward, and I've already consulted with the local councillors over the needs and requirements of that particular area to see if we can make a bid to make sure that money is ring-fenced. The final point, Simon, in relation to St Andrews, if the map isn't correct, I can assure you that the developer has met with St Andrews people, because I would sort of introduce them so they know where their boundaries are.
It is also worth noting that there are extant plans, proper plans with a capital P, for public realm improvements in the Stowe and Bushfair and what have you. No, indeed, so I just want to make sure that, we're close off. Right, any further questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, sorry, it's only because we've spent so long on it. There are quite a lot of trees along Howard Way. Is that anything that should be taken into consideration?
That will be part of the plan.
Does it do just be planning will protect the trees? And
It is a
just
plan
for the
for
sake
the
of
so
granted?
it's sort of,
Because we know what developers are like.
so there will be an horticultural report as part of the planning application. And we're definitely not going to be predetermining planning applications in this review.
No.
Right, so item 17, nothing else, recommendations A to C, noting the amendment to recommendation B for the addition of the words incorporating an appropriate level of affordable and social housing to continue at the end of that sentence. Are we agreed? Agreed. Right, moving on to item 18, the Article 4 direction for Harlow Enterprise Zone.
I'd like to make the recommendation as stated in the report and then make a few comments.
I'll second that as well. Yes,
I think on some levels people may well just feel that this is a bit belt and braces, but actually if you look at section 2 of the document, we already know that a number of buildings, Temple House, Terminus House, Redstone House, have been acquired by developers and have been turned into housing of a certain level that perhaps would not meet our expectations or requirements. So therefore it's critically important that we enter into the application for Article 4 to protect the other areas that we've got within the Temple Field area, which is London Road South, to ensure that we don't fall foul of any other developers or people wanting to sell their property on to get speculation of short-term nasty housing over these particular issues. So I hope this is going to be a fairly straightforward, no-nonsense. This is about protecting our investments for our future. Thank you, Chair.
So just a brief remark from me. Look, community development rights are a significant problem, well, nationally and particularly in Harlow. There is a number of, for those who aren't aware, community development rights allow developers to convert commercial premises into residential accommodation. without any reference, never mind approval, of the local planning authority.
Absolute disgraceful.
There are unfortunately a number of examples in Harlow now where commercial buildings have been converted, and in my humble opinion, at a low quality, into residential properties that the council certainly didn't approve, has no right to approve, and in some cases weren't informed of until after the event. It both causes issues in terms of aspirations for regeneration, particularly in the town centre. It also is difficult to understand for the general public when other local authorities outside of Harlow are placing their housing list in these converted premises in Harlow. There certainly have been a number of comments about Harlow Council having some cosy deal, selling Terminus House to Hackney Council, for example. And in fact, we don't own Terminus House, and actually neither does Hackney Council, and we have no say one way or the other. It is problematic. So there are issues more generally, but in this particular case, I think it's absolutely right that we protect an important economic development for Harlow, and by imposing an article for direction which effectively removes the permitted development rights to convert existing commercial properties into residential accommodation. So I think this is important. I think there's a more general issue, and certainly the local association is particularly interested in this topic. While I understand the sort of broad aspiration to increase housing supply, it has some perverse effects in a number of different areas, and Harlow being one of those areas. So, are there any other questions? So, the recommendation that the Governor is seeking of an Article 4 direction for Cale Park on page 159. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Well, item 19, claims the member of the local highways panel. I think I'll characterise with a bit of confusion with the accepted practice, and I thank Councillor Eddie Johnson for his intervention in this case. But we've always established a principle, regardless of the political control of either this council or the county council representation in this town, that there is a political, an even balance on the highways panel. To the executive for many years, when there was a different makeup of county councillors in this town, basically this is a county council body, but they have decided that it's appropriate that that convention continues. So this is a consequential change for that. And the councillors Karen Cameron and Mike Danvers replacing councillors David Carter and Tony Hall. Clearly, the four county councillors sit on by right. So, any questions or comments? Recommendation on page 163. Recommendation page also agreed.
Agreed.
Right, item 20, which is in the supplementary bit, which is referrals from audit and standards. So I'll take A and B together, that's all right. But the first referral is that we approve statement of accounts, basically a recommendation A and B on page 2 of the supplementary report. And the second one is that we acknowledge the matter of representation. I'm hoping as we also discuss the audit, this is uncontroversial. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Jay. Yes, we at Audit and Standards obviously went through this very closely last week with the council's auditors. Just a couple of comments. This is yet another year when the format and content of the annual accounts has changed. It seems to be an annual process, and I do have to compliment the head of finance and his team in the way that they're actually coping with all these changes and changing deadlines and so forth. It's a sort of never-ending process. So I was going to say it's a bit like the pages of Forth Road Bridge, but of course they don't do that anymore. But also, as I say, this particular change is at least a bit more worthwhile in the presentation of the report is a lot more understandable. You know, so there's a sort of a narrative report at the beginning, which makes it easier to actually follow. And I know most of you probably haven't even opened the first page, but I would recommend a flick through. There's all sorts of interesting bits of information in there which you may not be aware. So something I'd like to say is that a number of points were raised last week, and I've received advice that a number of the amendments or suggestions have been taken on board, which I'm grateful. Finally, it was bearing in mind this council for a number of years has placed increased housing as one of its major priorities, that last year we actually lost £6.2 million to the Treasury in pooling, because the council had no plans, no foresight, no idea on continuing to build social housing, so it couldn't use all the right to buy proceeds. So it just seems an incredible bit of incompetence that your main priority is to build council houses, and you're happy to throw away millions of pounds year on year because you can't use it.
I just comment that it seems an incredible amount of incompetence for the opposition's MPs to vote for a housing bill that has completely restricted all councils' plans to build in social housing, and having to completely allow us to now try and look completely out of the box because all conventional routes, everything that's been done has been restricted completely by completely changing the ball marks, setting the agenda when they first come in, agreeing a finance deal with every council, and then just going, actually, we're going to throw that out the window and just uproot everything for you, but please continue to deliver at a higher rate. It's just incomprehensible.
So, Michael, are you going to move the recommendations on both pages 2 and 159A and B?
So some of the Chairman.
I will second those. Are there any further comments or questions? So, if not, so I just said recommendations A and B on page 2 of the supplementary report, and recommendations A and B on page 159 of the supplementary report. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Presumably at some point I'll be signing the statement of the council from there. Right, good. And just for the record, by the way, I have gone through it in quite some detail, as is my fault. Right, so we're now on to item 21, which is basically noting the minutes of Shareholder Subcommittee, Safety Committee and the Cabinet Working Group. Noted. There being no matters of urgent business, we can now continue. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.